Blessings. What a guan. Cash App. Like, share, subscribe, hit that Cash App. And yeah, I just want to get into this review of Tariq Nasheed's new project, Buck Breaking. Right? Saw the promo for it. And the promo just told me everything I needed to know. I mean, as soon as I saw it, it's a 3-minute promo. I'll leave the link in the description, and I was like, I can't. I was like, really, I was like, come on, bro. It had the usual suspects, of course, the NOI members, all right, Reza, Lord Reza, the Scientologist slash medical expert slash NOI member slash conspiracy theorist. You had Lord Jamar, another conspiratard. You had a few scholars, I guess I forget their names, but they're the Hidden Colors crew, basically. And Corey Holcomb. Now, this is supposed to be an educational documentary. Not saying that Corey Holcomb's a dummy, but at the end of the day, dude is a comedian. And he's one of the major people that you promote. Wesley Muhammad and, of course, Tariq, who's all cornrowed up. I mean, you just looked at it, and on a subject like this, is politics, I'm like, come on, bro. Seriously. I mean, basically, here's what this is about. The documentary is about how the Alphabet Crew co-opted the black community. That's basically what it is when you see the promo. And, to me, it just makes a black man look more, I don't know. It just promotes us in a very subservient position. It really does. And I'm not going to go out of my way to why. I'm definitely not paying for this shit. All right? But I'm guessing there'll be no solutions at the end with this. It's just something to show, black men adopted the gay culture. And as you see in the video, you're going to see a lot of twerking and so on. And that's an issue in the community. But that's not our only issue in the community. But right now, since, thanks to your man Obama basically pushing the alphabet agenda, now Tariq is trying to say that that's the main reason why black families aren't together and what have you. I mean, this dude was teaching pimping and all this other shit earlier in his career. Still kind of dabbles into it as far as his game is concerned, but then again, that's not something that also can hurt the black family structure. What he preached, what he put out there. All right, and of course they go after the BLM, and I've spoken about the BLM before. Black Lives Matter is nothing more than a Trojan horse for the alphabet community. I understand that. But the film already looks like bullshit. And, what's he going to do? Show that black men were whipped and we got raped by black men, by white men? Okay, I'll be interested to see if he brings up a guy by the name of Thomas Thistlewood. All right, this was a slave. This was a guy who broke slaves by actually defecating in their mouths. So just imagine if you had a choice back then. Did you want the whip? Did you want to get fucked by your slave master? Did you want them to, rip your wife away and rape her in front of you? Or how about I defecate in your mouth? I mean, it's like choose your poison here. All right. So what are you going to teach us? See, what I think is going to happen with this, the guys who should see it aren't going to see it. Obviously, the zombies that are always there to buy whatever this guy sells, they're going to be there anyway. And what's funny, and I'm reading this off of the actual definition of what buck breaking is, off of the Kickstarter campaign. Yes, folks, Kickstarter. Here's what it is, and I'll put the link there as well. So he basically raised, his goal was to raise $75,000 for this documentary. Okay, we'll get to that later on because I want to bring up. I'm going to make a correlation with another point with that money, and he can make. Listen, you could. I'm not stopping him from making his money. If people are dumb enough to donate, not invest, but donate money to this dude to make another documentary. It's funny because all of his documentaries, he'll tell you how they're the best selling and they're this and they're that, but you're always asking for donations. And listen, if the hustle works, the hustle works. Keep doing it, get your money, whatever. But here's his definition. It says, a documentary about the psychological, sexual, and spiritual exploitation of descendants of American slavery. Really? Hold on a second. He says, Buckbreaking is a new compelling film produced and directed by the creator of the critically acclaimed Hidden Colors documentary series. The film will explore how certain types of propaganda has been used historically to manipulate and exploit American descendants of slavery. Isn't that ADOS? But whatever, let's keep it moving. The money raised through Kickstarter will be used for travel expenses for the film crew to conduct interviews in multiple cities, and the money will be also used to create special effects and titles, rendering compositing, sound design, and editing. There are also hardware and software that we need in order to create everything at a high resolution, blah, 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 blah. And as you know, COVID has kind of stopped a lot of that. Okay, so it was a goal of $75,000. He raised $92,000. Maybe he'll raise more. That's $18,000 above the amount. Is he giving that back? Probably not. But whatever. Again, make your money, bro. Get the money from this. Make the DVD. Get the back end and whatever. It's just Hidden Colors. Hidden Colors revamped. But it's just, the goal here is to say how black men have been feminized. So, which is why it's called buckbreaking, right? Buckbreaking. And what's funny is that, as you can see, this picture of the guy in the cornrows, right? So basically, in the trailer, you see Corey Holcomb talking about how if you're a heterosexual black man, all right, you can forget about getting a job. You can forget about winning the court case. You can forget about this, about that. And they show this image of this guy walking in, whether it's a courtroom or a job interview or whatever. You're walking in with cornrows? With cornrows, listen, obviously, you want to wear cornrows, you can do that. You shouldn't be punished or abused or even killed for having cornrows. All right? And if you want to wear your hair natural at a job, you can wear your hair natural and, trim it up or whatever, and a natural beard. Who's going to a job or into the courtroom with freaking cornrows? I mean, already this starts off janky as hell. It just starts off janky as hell. And what's funny about this is that here you have, because in this film, you're going to have a lot of gay shit. Let's just keep it a buck. There'll be a whole lot of gay shit in this thing. But my question is this. How is it if Tariq, who can't stop using terms like bussy and booty hole and moist to describe black people, you never heard him direct the term moist to anybody white. It's always black. Corey Holcomb as well. He's always talking about the asshole and making gay jokes and all this other shit. These guys supposedly are against buckbreaking, which is the feminization of men. But they use all these feminine, gay-ass terms. But what they're going to show They're showing a historical fact of how we were buck broken back then, and a lot of those guys were buck broken against their will. How is it that Tariq is going to promote something and tell us how we were buck broken back then against our will, and it's turned this agenda where black men are feminized? Meanwhile, you will do everything you can to protect, to promote, to cape for black celebrities who time and time again, through their actions, through how they dress, through their lifestyle, through everything, all right, are willing buck broken individuals and promote this buck brokenness all over the planet. Explain that. Tariq, anytime a celebrity gets in trouble, especially big celebrities, Tariq is running to defend these people. Running. I want to go ahead and read this little story about your man Prince. And this is, as you see the picture with your boys Prince and Michael, this article is I'm just going to read it. It kind of sets the tone. And the article was written the week that Prince died. All right, it's written by a guy by the name of Stephen W. Trasher. He's light-skinned and he's gay. All right, and I'll tell you why that matters in a minute. But it says, Prince broke all the rules about what black American men should be. And the subtitle is, the musical genius captivated both men and women with his high heels, tight butt, and playful sexuality, and refuse to be anyone's slave. Now, I'm not going to read the whole article. I'll leave a link in the description, but here's the most pertinent part of the article, all right? It said, Prince repelled and fascinated me because he represented every side of all the contradictions I felt. I felt nervous even looking at him, and yet I couldn't look away. When he said, what would it mean if I opened myself up to the letting go of all those rules that he seemed to have dispensed with? That purple clothing, those high heels, and ruffled shirts, was he proudly feminine or so secure in his masculinity that he didn't mind others questioning it? First of all, I had to stop there. Think back when you were younger. If you go back to maybe the late 80s, early 90s or whatever, if you ever seen anyone who dressed like Prince or Michael Jackson for that matter, what would happen to that person? I'm talking about whether you were in the 80s or in the 90s. If you came to school dressing like Prince, high heels, tight clothes, and what have you, or in a Michael Jackson jacket, which they sold in stores, what would happen? How much would you get ragged on? Let's continue. That small frame and that tight small, and I remember this is a gay guy writing this, and that small butt that seemed to leave him shaking that ass. For men and women alike, who was he trying to turn on with Sexy Motherfucker or Cream? And what if someone thought I wasn't getting turned on by this big hair dancers or by the artist himself? And then he writes, Prince was a paradox in that he expanded the concept of what it meant to be a man while also deconstructing the entire idea of gender. Like Michael Jackson, Prince seemed to perform a kind of black masculinity that was neither neutered nor completely in line with the hyper masculinity so common in rap coming out of the nearby Los Angeles at the time. It was as fluid, as luscious as his long eyelashes, and as delicious looking as those lips of his, and seemed to welcome everyone. His gaze was as slippery, self-assured, and questioning as his music itself. And when those eyes of his, peered with the light scruff around his mouth, caught yours from an album cover, almost daring you to look away with their confidence. They also seem to know you'd be powerless not to. Again, I want to stress, this is a gay man writing this. Okay? And interestingly enough, at the time he died, CNN also brought this up. As a matter of fact, CNN brought up how his androgynous look and said how he crossed the boundaries of sexuality. You know, two other artists they've also said that about? They said that about Michael Stipe of REM and David Bowie. Both gay men. All right? Now, you may say, you know what? That's a gay guy saying that. But let me ask you something. If Jay-Z dies, you think someone's gonna write that about him? If Denzel dies, is somebody gonna write that about him? Or will they write that about a guy who clearly, and androgynous, obviously, what does that mean? Okay? Could be a man, it could be a woman, right? You could like dick, you could like pussy. Huh? That's what that's about. But see, here's a man who has all the riches in the world, right? All the fame in the world, all the money in the world. And look at what this guy promotes. Look at this. Tell me, you talking about a broken buck, but what guy who, if this is not an example of a broken buck, what is? What is? And again, we're not talking about the music here. The music, these two are geniuses. This has nothing to do with the music or the fan. Actually, before I decided to do this, I saw Prince's rendition of While My Guitar Gently Weeps. It was him, Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, and also George Harrison's son. It's that old Beatles song that George Harrison sung. And Prince did a solo at the end. I'll leave a link to that too. It's just, again, the man's a genius. I love his music. But come on, y'all. Let's just keep this a buck. But see, you speak to the Tariqs of the world and the Rizza Islams of the world. And what are they saying? You got Tariq basically saying that, oh, they killed him off. They tried to take his money, right? Tariq is saying, so Prince gets an entire catalog back from Warner Brothers, and now he suddenly dies. Right? Notice a pattern here with black artists? I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it seems like a conspiracy. First of all, nigga, Prince he's been a drug addict for a long time. Sorry to break it to you. Okay? Dude is like 5'3" and 100 pounds soaking wet. Traveling around the world with a big guitar, jumping on stage. After a while, it wears on the bones. Okay? Let's just keep it a buck here. There's some people, and he lived a pretty wild life. Very wild. I'm sure this wasn't the only Percocets wasn't the only drug he was on. Think of how wild he was back in the 80s. As a matter of fact, here's the funny thing. He was thrown out of the house when he was really young by his father because I believe his father caught him trying to do an orgy or something. There was a story about that. Him and his friends. You can imagine, I mean, a guy who's going to wear this type of shit on stage, right? Don't tell me that he hasn't been touched at some point in his life. And what's funny, there's this interview of one of his affiliates, Mickey Free. If you're into music, you know who Mickey Free is. Mickey Free was on Shalimar, and, you know, David Chappelle did a skit about him and Prince at one point. If you notice Shalimar, as you see this picture, okay, he's the guy who looks, you know, more feminine than everyone else in the group, right? He literally dressed like a woman. Well, this cat did an interview with DJ Vlad. and he talked about looking like a woman. And one of his answers was, well, if you're dressed like that, first of all, he sounded gay as hell. And he was talking about, oh, I can wear eyeliner with the best of them. And, I don't mind the androgynous look and blah, 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 whatever. But he mentioned that by dressing that way, you made more money. Now, again, that may have been true, but did everybody dress like that at the time? People always will say something like, "Oh, well, that's how it was back in the days." Really, did Barry White dress like that? How about Keith Sweat? How about Barry? How about Bobby Brown, Stevie Wonder? When have any of those guys ever put on lipstick or looked androgynous? So that's a bullshit answer. But when you look at guys like Rizza Islam will sit down and try to convince you that, well, he died because of a conspiracy and this and that, trying hard to protect this very feminine, broken image. I'm not saying I'm glad he died, but come on, goddamn. Even if this guy kept his money, what would this guy have promoted right until the bitter end? But you're talking about broken bucks? Nobody wanted to go up to him and say, listen, dressing like that with your ass cheeks hanging out and stuff, this image right here, with your ass cheeks hanging out. How about this image here where he's promoting his Controversy album? This was way back in the late 70s, early 80s. He's dressing like this. What heterosexual man, and one of the things Tariq had said when he passed, he said, he wasn't gay. Gee, Prince was running game. I swear to God, this is what Tariq said. Tariq said, well, Prince was running game. He said, yeah, I'll dress like this. I'll dress like a homo, but I'll still, but I'll get a bunch of girls and everything, but I'll still make this paper. But I just showed you all these other artists who weren't going to dress like that. You've never seen Bobby Brown. Bobby Brown was the number one artist in the year of 1989. You never seen him dress like that. This is 89. This is back when all those guys were hot and Bobby Brown was number one. Go check the chart. Just go check the charts. Check the albums. So that's bullshit. Maybe you dress like that because something happened to you in your past. Which brings us to this guy. And again, look, I know you guys love Michael. I love MJ. I love this man's music. This man's extremely talented. He was also mentally ill. You tell me. You go ahead and tell me what. Look, you look at this picture. The man was born in 1959. And from the age of 21, this is a man who spent his entire life, hundreds of millions of dollars, trying to look like a white woman. He bought white children from a white dentist who dropped the seed. You think about that. This guy couldn't even jerk off on a cup and donate his sperm to some chick in the hood to keep his lineage going. He hated his blackness that much. How about his inappropriate relationships with kids? Yeah, I know. The worst thing to call a person is a pedophile. I get it. But here's a guy who's, okay, he missed out on his childhood. What, when he was 5 or 6? Okay, let's just think about this. Because his childhood, maybe he's talking about between the ages of 5 and 12. At what age during that time are little boys, holding other boys' hands? Probably, in pre-kindergarten or kindergarten. You're trying to keep all the classmates together, and you're like, hold this person's hand. Everybody hold hands, and, we don't want everybody to get lost. Maybe then, all right, what boys hold each other's hands at 8, 9, 10, 12? Like Michael was in that Bashir interview on ABC, where he was holding that 12-year-old kid's hands. The kid wasn't even black, and he hung with nothing but white boys. Come on already. Come on already. But this is what these guys would call a strong black man. Go watch that Ed Bradley interview with Michael Jackson. This was had to be what? I'll put the link in the description. But this is after his second trial. I think this was 2004, maybe 2005, when he had that interview with Ed Bradley, who asked him all the right questions and revealed a lot in that interview. But this guy, with his face looking like I don't know what the hell, and he's sitting there with Ed Bradley, telling Ed Bradley that it's okay to hop in beds with kids. And the vertigo, okay, I get it. He had vertigo, and he also had his hair burnt off. I get that. But how does vertigo, how does that change his lifts? Change his cleft? Huh? How does that turn? How does that straighten his nose? How does vertigo have that effect on you? I can show you tons of situations of people with vertigo who have remained. There's a newscaster who had vertigo. He still painted his face black. This man wanted to be a white woman. If you look at this meme that's going around with him and Nancy Pelosi, that's tragic, bro. That's tragic. And then people will talk about, well, they didn't find anything in his house when the FBI did a search. First of all, yes, they did. Yes, they did. But they also found a book called The Fourth Sex. And the subtitle is Adolescent Extremes. You have that book in your house, you'd probably get arrested. You download that book, they'll probably come over and say you're looking at child porn. The Fourth Sex, Adolescent Extremes. Go Google it. Then the documentary comes out. And everybody's talking about how they lied and what have you. Bro, in the documentary, the man bought these guys houses. These are kids. This is out of his nephew and niece's mouths. The documentary comes out. They get all in their shit. And you even have people saying, oh, why would you leave your kids with a grown man? So you're admitting that this guy was in some fuck shit. But all he's done all his life, roll with white people, roll with white kids, change his face to look white, but you do everything you can to protect this? Listen, as talented as Michael was, he wasn't the only great artist. You have to save this, and you mean to tell me you're going to look at this and say, this is not the example of a broken buck? And by the way, because people love bringing this up, well, they were great businessmen, and they tried to get their masters, and they tried to get their music, and they killed them so they can get all their money. First of all, the music industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Hundreds of billions of dollars. What would they, Prince never had a will. He didn't have any kids. There wasn't any big charity he was leaving all his money to, or nothing like that. People will bring up, oh, well, he was into chemtrails. Even Tariq said, oh, Prince was pretty woke. Woke how? What? He made a song about the Baltimore uprising, okay. And he was into chemtrails, okay. So he actually had a heart when it came towards black people. What's the point? What is the point? Look at what he promoted to get all that money. But you're telling me that they killed Prince so they can get, he was worth $400,000, so they killed this guy to get a measly $400 million? Measly $400 million that he was leaving to nobody. They're probably still fighting to this day to get his estate. $400 million, a multi-billion-dollar industry for a dude that doesn't even have any seasonal lineage. And Mike, the Jackson clan, I mean, you had his nieces and nephews go on the Breakfast Club basically saying that Michael Jackson owned Sony. A big multi-billion-dollar corporation, Michael owned it. And even if Michael got his masters and kept his $1 billion or $2 billion, what was this guy gonna do with the money, y'all? You act like he was getting the money so he can go fund the revolution. Give me a break with this. Just look at that whole Jackson family clan. The whole family clan is white as hell. Meanwhile, Tariq Nasheed, when the documentary comes out, he has them on his show for clout and to try to say that Michael Jackson, he's innocent, and we need to protecting this guy who is literally a broken buck. What's so funny during that Ed Bradley interview, right? In the Ed Bradley interview, Ed Bradley had asked him, would you want your kids to sleep in the bed with some stranger? And Michael Jackson said, and the way he said it was very telling. He said, yeah, it's no big deal. I mean, it happened all the time when I was growing up. In other words, he was in the bed with, just think of when he was coming up. Him, the family, Joe on the road. And listen, Joe's doing his business because Joe's a businessman. And just think of all the places that Michael Jackson was probably left. All right? They spoke about this in that in the VH1 special, The American Dream, where Michael Jackson was under the bed while his brothers were fucking other chicks. Who knows if Michael Jackson might have gotten touched back then? In fact, I know he probably did. You don't turn into this unless that's the case. And no, I don't think it was Joe, but somebody did it because this man, look at how feminine he's become. Look at how broken he's become. And the reason, and when you watch these guys, whether it's the Rizza Islams, whether it's the Tariqs, whether it's the any of these conspirators, the Nation of Islam, who loves these guys. They love celebrities. Why do they love celebrities? Very simple. Celebrities bring two things: money and members, the lifebloods of cults. But it was very telling that Ed Bradley asked that question to Michael Jackson, and he answered it the way he did. Because Common had put out a book. He put out a biography recently about how he was molested. And Common talked about he was molested by a guy who told him to get on the bed. The same way Michael Jackson gets on the bed with kids. And the same way Michael Jackson admitted in that interview that he did the same thing coming up. You have to break out of this mindset with these celebrities who, the bigger they are, in my opinion, and it's not my opinion, it's just fact. The bigger you are as a celebrity in this white hegemonic system, the more anti-black you become. The more anti-black you become. And interestingly enough, Tariq doesn't just love those two. Tyler Perry, all right? The guy who brought us Medea, who took that for 20 years, he built that up. You know what Tariq Nasheed said about Tyler Perry? Tariq Nasheed said, this is out of his mouth. He said this a few years ago. He said, I guess Tyler was putting out another Medea film, and he said, well, Tyler's doing his thing. He's playing the game. You got to coon it up for a few years before you really make it big. He actually said this shit. So wait a minute. Black people who were doing all sorts of degrading shit in the early 1900s, all right? The blackface or Lincoln Perry, the Lincoln Perry who played Step and Fetch It, all right? To the 70s blaxploitation, all that degrading shit they've done, and here Tyler Perry is in the 2000s, and Tariq Nasheed is saying you still have to do this? Dressing in a dress like some big husky dude in a dress and dressing like a woman, that's not a broken buck, and you're praising that? He also loves Steve Harvey. He also loves Snoop Dogg. I can go down the list. Even when Terry Crews was doing his fuck shit, Tariq was like, yeah, well, that's my man. He's just doing some really coonish shit. This man loves celebrity broken bucks, and he never speaks against them. But meanwhile, you're going to put out a documentary, all right, showing black men in a subservient position, showing us as, listen, you got your asses kicked by these white men, and this is why you're a bunch of homos right now. You'll never, I guarantee in this documentary, he's not going to attack the white hegemonic system, because he's going to have to go back and talk to his white mother-in-law about why he went at them so hard. And look, just to show you that I'm not just picking on, black artists, because this, to me, this is more like a Hollywood thing. But my point is, these guys, as I've said, they're willing to be involved and partake in this lifestyle and in this world at the detriment of black people. All right? But this is an article. This was an article about Yoko Ono. It's around the time that the killer of her husband, John Lennon, was going to be put on parole. And the article's titled, "He Had a Desire to Sleep with Men." Yoko Ono reveals the truth about John Lennon's bisexuality, her drug taking, and how she still fears her killer, Mark Chapman. But just here's an excerpt from it. Lennon was long thought to have had an affair with Brian Epstein, the gay manager of the Beatles. A fictionalized story of the romance was made into a film, The Hours and Times, in 1992. The movie, centered around Epstein's crush on Lennon, won an award at the Sundance Film Festival. Rumors about the two started swirling when Lennon, whose wife at the time, Cynthia, was pregnant with their son Julian, went on a vacation with Epstein to Barcelona, according to the Beatles' Bible. Lennon said afterwards, "I was on holiday with Brian Epstein in Spain, where the rumors went around that he and I were having a love affair." Well, it was almost a love affair, but not quite. It was never consummated, but it was a pretty intense relationship. It was my first experience with a homosexual that I was conscious was homosexual. However, Lennon's friend Pete Stoughton would later say that the star told him he had allowed Epstein to toss him off. Okay? Jeez. Ono, in her new interview, said she and Lennon had long conversations about bisexuality, in which he said he believed everyone is likely bisexual, which is bullshit, but it is inhibited from exploring it because of society. So we are hiding the other side of ourselves, which is less acceptable, Ono said. She was then questioned about the supposed affair between Lennon and Epstein. Well, the story I was told was a very explicit story. From that I think they didn't have it, which was sex, she said. Ono went on to say that she believed Lennon admitted to the relationship when it didn't necessarily happen. But they went to Spain, and when they came back, tons of reporters were asking, "Did you do it? Did you do it?" So she said, so he said, I didn't, she said. Isn't that amazing? But of course, he would say that, I'm sure Brian Epstein made a move, yeah. Lennon just didn't want to do it, I think. Ono said she doesn't believe Lennon ever had sex with a man but likely wanted to. No, I didn't think so, Ono told the Daily Beast. I think he had a desire to, but I think he was too inhibited. Now, this is John Lennon of the Beatles, okay? Where women were all types of women were coming in and out of their hotel rooms. Just think of, this was back in the 60s. Beatlemania was at its height. And for him to even think that, and there was just recently a story with Paul McCartney had on the Huffington Post saying that he and John Lennon masturbated together with friends. So at the end of the day, this is just this is just the music industry in Hollywood and the weirdo shit that happens there, bro. So I know that y'all will think that I'm just going after our best artists. Nah, this is just the culture, but you're talking about broken bucks, all right? And these guys were willing to just indulge in the culture, and you're going to uplift them. Meanwhile, there are hundreds of other black people who didn't go that route. Folks, this movie, this is just, here's what this movie's going to have. I've never seen it before. I know that. But here's what's going to have. You're going to have a lot of sexual gay images, a whole lot of gay shit. You're going to see black men being shown as weak, all right? He's going to talk about, oh, well, you know, this is what's breaking up the black family. Hell, taking black men away from the black family, that should be enough. I don't need to see them literally getting whipped or getting their butt. We should know all of this stuff. The people who should see this or should read it, I guarantee no books are going to be recommended from this either. All right? And so this movie right here, I'm not looking, I don't need to watch Corey Holcomb or Reza or Demar. Just the lineup itself. I'm like, man, please. But here's the funny thing, though. This man, as I said, he raised his goal was to raise $75,000 to make this film, right? It's funny because Shakim Ra, who just got opened up today on Taz's program and other places, where this guy turned out to be nothing but a piece of shit. But Shakim Ra went after Lennon Honor because he raised $20,000 for a documentary, right? Okay. Shakim Ra said, you don't need $20,000 to make this documentary. You know, I did it for much, much less, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But Tariq raised $75,000 for a documentary, got $92,000, which, whatever. He got $18,000 more. He's not going to give it back, but whatever. He's played this game, and his zombie followers are going to eat it up, whatever. One of his followers, this shows you how dumb these guys are. He said, do you think that Ron Howard and Steven Spielberg uses money from their own pockets with all the money they make? No. What they do, they get investors. They get people who invest in their movies and expect to get a rate of return from it. I mean, the trick bag is so subtle. This guy was telling me, well, you know, what bank is going to give money to a film that talks against white supremacy? Tons of them do. You talking about? Tons of them do. Tons of them do. Tons of banks give money to black films. Okay, is it less of a chance with us than with white films? Of course. But Spike, where do you think Spike gets his money from? But he gets it from investors who expect a return. You're not investing in Tariq's film. This is nothing more than a donation, Negro. Man, listen, Tariq's got a good bunch. That I can say. I mean, bro, stick with these people because these people are gonna keep the mortgage paid. That's for sure. But yeah, you know, fuck this documentary. I'll wait to torrent it or when it's free or whatever. You guys can do what you want. Peace. Like, share, subscribe, Cash App, and big up on yourself.